Welcome and thank you for joining us. Today we will be discussing the evolving business of life plan communities, sometimes referred to as managed communities for seniors, or more commonly called continuing care retirement communities, CCRCs. Our goal is to help you better understand the risks and the safeguards that shape residents' long-term financial security and quality of life. This webinar is brought to you by the National Continuing Care Residents Association, NACRA. Over the next 20 minutes, we'll look closely at how senior living and life plan communities are evolving and where some have stumbled. Most importantly, we'll explore how residents can play a more empowered and informed role in guiding the future of their communities. We'll begin by discussing 3 troubling stories about real-world communities, then look at the role of residents in the basics of governance and finance, and close with practical tools and opportunities for action. The first case we'll look at is Amsterdam at Harborside, a luxury CCRC located on Long Island that has filed for bankruptcy not once, but 3 times. Residents paid up to $1.7 million in entrance fees, expecting a lifetime of care. But in the most recent collapse, more than 180 residents lost millions in evaporating refunds. Memory care services were discontinued, and promised services were no longer available. Now, the bankruptcy resulted from various factors, including the impact of the pandemic, and on rent entrance fees being paid by new move-ins being used for operations and debt service. Harborside also had trouble recruiting new residents due to the extraordinarily high entrance fees, ranging from $425,000 to $2.3 million, depending on the unit that was selected. Bankruptcies in this sector are statistically rare, less than 0.1% of all CCRCs nationwide. But for the thousands of residents caught in them, the impact was devastating. According to Wall Street Journal review of court filings, at least 16 CCRCs, including Harborside, have filed for Chapter 11 bankruptcy since March of 2020. These bankruptcies wiped out over $190 million in savings for more than 1,000 families, including 212 at Harborside. While bondholders were expected to recover around 50 cents on the dollar, residents and families of deceased residents receive only partial reimbursement of entrance fees, with an estimated distribution between 25% and 33%, which translates to roughly 25 cents on a dollar. The Harborside case highlights the vulnerability of residents' assets in such situations. The problem is bankruptcy law prioritizes secured debt over entrance fees. Consequently, residents are among the last and the least to receive a settlement. But on the positive side, in many cases, bankruptcy can be avoided or settled by a merger of acquisition. But this too can have risks, as you will see in the next example. In the next case, residents in River Glen at St. Charles, Illinois, thought this would be their forever home. This senior living community outside of Chicago had units for independent and assisted living and for memory care. It seemed stable until it was sold to a group of private firms. NBC News came in and interviewed residents who reported that when the new owners took over, monthly maintenance fees quadrupled, rising from $1,395 to over $6,000 a month, effectively forcing them to move out. And the promised refund of entrance deposits of 85% were cut to 75%, resulting in a $100,000 loss. Now this was not a bankruptcy, it was an acquisition, but the outcome was the same. Residents were severely hurt financially. Honestly, sometimes a CCRC rescued from financial collapse by a merger acquisition transaction, but at other times these deals feel more like raids where promises made to residents are unilaterally changed or voided. The owner makes a profit while the residents bear the financial loss and decreased services. We call this dilemma rescued or raided. For the next example, this is Rogue Valley Manor, a not-for-profit CCRC located in Medford, Oregon. In 2012, the residents of Rogue Valley began to suspect that management was using their funds from entrance fees and monthly fees for other businesses. They discovered that their money was used to help start 2 new CCRCs located over 300 miles away in Portland and Seattle. Now, it was not difficult to see how these distant facilities offered no benefit for Rogue Valley residents. So the residents sued the management company, and after months of negotiations, the residents' attorney announced that Rogue Valley Manor Residents Steering Committee had accepted a settlement offer by the management company, enabling the parties to avoid class action litigation. The settlement gave the community an independent board of directors that included 2 residents as voting members on the board, limitations on the operator's ability to remove directors from the board, and capped management fees for 3 years. Additionally, $400,000 in monthly fees were credited back to Rogue Valley residents. The nursing home sector is being especially impacted. Professor Catherine Pearson from Penn State's Dickinson Law School recently noted in an editorial in the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette that private equity is reshaping the elder care landscape, resulting in over 20 bankruptcy filings of elder care facilities in the local area. Private equity firms extract money from nursing homes in a process called sale-leaseback, or selling the land out from under the facilities for a lump sum payment. Then the nursing homes must pay rent or management fees to occupy the facilities that they once owned. On a positive side, though, some senior care businesses have quietly been absorbed through mergers or acquisition transactions, providing stability, but others result in chaos and financial loss for residents. The question becomes, was it a rescue or a raid? Let's look at a bit of history. Early CCRCs did not start as businesses. They were religious or fraternal roots. They were built on community trust and a spirit of mutual care. Such communities were often called old people's homes, established to care for retired clergy, military, or members of fraternities or their widows. They were funded by contributions from members of a larger denomination outside of the residents in the life care facility themselves. But in the 1970s and 80s, a different concept emerged in life care communities that were fully funded by entrance fees and monthly charges paid by the residents themselves. Unfortunately, one legacy from the early history is the pattern of governance throughout the industry that presumes that residents are passive recipients of charity. The CCRC market has changed again. Entering residents today are younger, smart, skilled, and many are anxious to be involved in the governance of their communities. In addition, residents who pay large entrance fees and ongoing monthly service charges think of their role as stakeholder, not as a tenant. A major investor and partner in the community, residents expect transparencies and accountability. In addition, Investors expect to have the right to an active role in decisions for the community's operation and financial affairs. There is a growing shift away from the hospitality-oriented paradigms towards this partnership between residents and management. Communities that recognize this mind shift are taking advantage of this change by increasing resident engagement and freedoms. These communities are more likely to thrive. Now, in the next section of this presentation, we'll focus on understanding the economic risks and the elements of CCRCs, that contracts and governance procedures. Business experts remind us that every life plan agreement is actuarial at its core. Residents pool resources inside a corporate entity much like an insurance pool. The idea is that invested contributions more than cover daily living, health care, and build reserves for unpredictable events. If the math holds, the pool remains stable. But actuarial models are only projections. If residents live longer than expected, or if more people develop chronic conditions, or if nursing care demand spikes, or if the stock market drops, decreasing investment returns, the costs can exceed the plan. Now, unlike GAAP accounting, that's general accepted accounting practices, actuarial analysis can assess the level of reserves needed to weather potential risks. Now, there are a wide range of risks, as shown here on this slide, that boards, community leaders, and residents should consider. Some are personal, some are temporal, structural, economic, regulatory, and even the weather. To assess these risks, some progressive and wise community operators do financial stress testing in their business planning. As an example, if a housing market slows and prices drop, prospective residents may be unable to sell their homes, reducing cash available needed for entrance fees. Now, an elder law attorney or professional planner can provide valuable help in assessing, planning, and evaluating these risks. Realistic understanding of risks and residents' rights is critically important. Some residents falsely feel like they have purchased a home and a promise of continuing care. But in reality, legally, most CCRC contracts are simply residence and care agreements, operative word agreements, that are not at all like a contract for purchasing tangible real estate ownership. And in most cases, residents have no say at all in changes to the agreement. The bottom line is that life plan agreements are both actuarial and cultural. They succeed only when the finances are sound and the mission stays true. Here again, professional advice can be invaluable. An elder law attorney can help determine whether changes remain consistent with the contract or whether residents' rights are being eroded. Now, in some states, they have an official complaint procedure, but typically these state agencies have no enforcement authority. So in serious cases like Rogue Valley, legal action may be necessary and can be successful. Now let's talk about organizational structure. In most CCRCs, they are governed by a board of directors. In some communities, residents serve on the board, but in many cases, the board governs with little or no direct contact with residents. Consequently, their financial decisions may prioritize business benefits over community stability. And administrators are under limited obligation to disclose financial or strategic direction of the organization. In many cases, the board will hire an operating company to provide community services including food, transportation, facility maintenance, and operations, sometimes for multiple communities. This structure has advantages of centralizing procurement, economies of scale in purchasing, and possibly labor savings. However, it adds a level of isolation from the residents who are using these services. Consequently, residents may be seen as customers, not as partners in the operation of the community. Residents need a voice and transparency as safeguards. NACRA strongly advocates that community corporate boards include at least 3 full-time voting resident directors. Candidates should be selected by the resident council, not by the seated board, and resident directors should be free to share information with the community, while of course protecting confidential or proprietary business information. The rationale for enrolling resident directors is to provide a direct stakeholder voice both to and from the board, to draw on the rich talent pool of residents in a community, to be accountable to both residents and the business, to improve transparency, and to encourage buy-in on board decisions and policies. So, are you ready to take action? If so, NACRA offers an array of educational and practical tools to help. Publications include NACRA's Consumer Guide that helps residents evaluate and understand contracts before signing. NACRA's Financial Soundness Handbook helps residents make sense of community financial reports. There are links to other organizations' publications like the National Academy of Elder Law Journal, including an article by Yvonne Troya, What Elder Law Attorneys Should Know About CCRCs. NACRA also offers a forum that's a vehicle for raising and discussing issues with residents and with other organizations. Access to NACRA's site is free and it's open to the public, but there are members-only sections for sensitive subjects. Together, these tools can help you ask better questions and demand clearer answers. An especially important item on the NACRA website is the Model Bill of Rights for Residents that aims to ensure balance and transparency. It lists 17 topics, including core principles such as the right to organize, the right to transparent financials, the right to elect resident directors, and the right to be consulted before major changes are made to a community. Now, since our time is limited, we won't review all 17 items on the list, but these are not luxuries. They are the foundations for trust. In conclusion, we residents are not passive tenants. We are partners in the communities that we live in and call home. By understanding the CCR business model, demanding transparency, and advocating for reforms, we can protect what matters the most: trust, care, stability, and community sustainability. NACRA invites you to participate locally, regionally, and nationally. We are of residents, by residents, and for residents. Thank you for your attention and commitment.